Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something colder than that leftover pot pie in the back of your fridge. The secret sleep hacks of medieval monks. Forget the romanticised view of cloisters and candlelight chants. We're talking about cloaks thick enough to insulate a small horse, and the daily grind of a monastery life that often resembled a bizarre episode of a reality show, minus the camera crew. So, before you're wrapped up tighter than a monk on a cold winter night, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and how late you've stayed up, because let's be honest, we both know it's way past your bedtime. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan for that perfect soothing hum, and find a cosy spot. Maybe a mat on the floor if you're feeling authentically medieval. Let's linger here for a moment. Have you ever wondered why monks wore those long robes? Did they have a secret laundry technique or just an endless supply of detergent from Laundry Afterlife? What were mealtime gatherings like when the menu consisted of mystery gruel? Did they have a favourite snack that didn't involve a liturgical chant? And let's not even get started on how they handled personal time. Oh, and congratulations, you've just woken up in 1275. In a stone monastery. The air is thick with incense and expectations, your bed is made from straw, and there's a rooster next door that seems particularly judgmental. Good luck. Imagine stepping into a world of cold stone walls, flickering torches, and an overwhelming smell of incense that clings to your robes like an unwanted family member. Welcome to the monastery, where silence is golden, and except for the occasional hem from the abbot, conversations are about as common as seeing a unicorn. This is where monks live, pray, and, if they're feeling particularly daring, sneak a piece of bread when nobody's looking. Let's take a deep breath. No, not that incense-laden one. That's just going to make you cough. Picture this monastery as a fascinating yet mildly oppressive Instagram account, filled with images of solemn men in drab robes clutching books and possibly bickering over who miscounted the prayer beads. In a world where emotions are capital crimes, a jest about the local baker's bent breadstick gets you looks sharper than the abbot's eyebrows. So instead of giggling, you get your daily dose of existential dread and wonder why a life of piety seems to come with the fringe benefit of perpetual boredom. The daily routine, a masterclass in tedium. And it all starts early. Think crack of dawn early, when the rooster is less a herald and more a certified alarm clock with a penchant for noise pollution. Pray, then rise early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Except you're actually bright-eyed from a lack of sleep, courtesy of that prickly bed of straw you've been napping on. You climb out from under a wool blanket that's more claustrophobic than comforting, and remind yourself that you're not only awake, but also committed to a day filled with labour, prayer, and the occasional solemn walk in the graveyard. Because why not ponder mortality, am I right? Now, breakfast. Oh, glorious breakfast. Or maybe not so glorious. You're not reaching for a muffin or that last slice of pizza left in the fridge. No. In a monastery, breakfast consists of a steaming bowl of gruel so thin you could practically gaze through it. Sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Picture yourself slurping on your hearty mix of oats and water, trying your hardest to embrace the flavour while silently promising to pray extra hard for lunch to arrive. If you're lucky, maybe you'll find a hard hunk of bread lurking around, but beware. That bread is likely as stale as the conversation around the breakfast table. After the thrilling culinary escapade, it's time for the core of monk life. Prayer. Gather round, men. Because nothing says, let's praise the Lord like a group of seriously sleepy faces mumbling through the same phrases while wondering who forgot to bring the coffee. Just think. All that energy spent on holy chant practices while barely a soul can stay awake long enough to actually care about the line, "Hallowed be thy name." Fidgeting feels justified, especially when someone's fingernails are making nail-shaped impressions on your jaw. If the average sermon feels like a board meeting, you didn't ask. For welcome to the spiritual showdown of endless praises. Now you're off once again to the garden. What? You thought laziness would be a monk's secret to enlightenment? Fake news. You're about to become an honorary farmhand. As your hands delve into dirt, you'll discover that alongside cultivating the earth, it also cultivates a profound longing to flee this holy penitentiary. It's just you, the weeds, and your aspirational thoughts of deep-fried food. The abbot might prance by, murmuring something about devotion while you're contemplating the merits of running off to serious revolution, all in the comfort of your own mind, of course. Fingers sore and back creaking, it's finally time for the midday prayer. More wonderful recitations, where you may or may not literally fight the urge to nod off. Is there a doctor in the monastery? Nope, just a whole lot of keep praying and hopeful glances aimed toward heaven that perhaps the Almighty will send you a miracle in the form of a properly scheduled afternoon nap. As dusk falls, the incense thickens. The ceremonial lighting of candles can turn into a potential sport. Who can snuff theirs out the quickest without catching a sleeve on fire? Soon it's time to huddle together and reflect on the woes of the day. Meanwhile, you silently contemplate whether tomorrow's gruel might somehow taste worse, and why the heck you agreed to live in a cheese grater made of stone. And so it goes, day in, day out. In this cosy cloister, existence is a cycle of the trials and tribulations of monastic life, punctuated by the occasional snack heist, silence cough, and unenthusiastic prayer. The adventure of being a monk starts with little more than a straw bed and an abundance of hope, or at least it would, if hope could be measured in gruel rations. Our breakfast in the monastery. No eggs, no bacon, just a bowl of thin gruel, so watery you could put out a campfire with it. Ever tried to choke down what seems to be the byproduct of hay and a bad idea? If you thought modern oatmeal was bland, just wait until you taste the sacred concoction of yesterday's bread, questionable herbs, and the faint echo of your dreams of a hearty breakfast. It's the type of meal that makes you question your life choices, while simultaneously invoking gratitude for that inspiring, if underwhelming, morning prayer. The monks shuffle into the refectory, their eyes barely open, like zombies awakening for a battle with blandness. The ritual begins. Each monk approaches the steaming cauldron, which looks like it belongs in a witch's hut rather than a holy sanctuary. It's unclear whether it's merely the first course or an offering to the gods of nutrition. Gentlemen, today's special is gruel with a hint of yesterday's disappointment, proclaims Brother Oswald, the self-appointed master of mornings, as he ladles out the mystery slop into waiting bowls. As the gruel is distributed, you can hear a deafening silence that falls over the room like a heavy wool blanket. No one dares to speak. The sheer audacity of a comment could launch a civil war over the gruel's consistency. One wrong word about the texture, and you might find yourself scrubbing the abbey floor as penance for the sacrilege of mockery. It's a dangerous game, navigating breakfast among monks. Everyone knows that laughter is forbidden for a full 10 minutes after eating, lest the air become too cheerful and attract jealousy from the nearby hermit. At the same time, breakfast is also an exercise in meditation. Each spoon of gruel requires deep philosophical contemplation. Am I really eating today? Or is this just a cruel test by the abbot? As you gather your courage to take a bite, you cannot help but wonder how much wooden spoon negotiation will be necessary to choke it down without grimacing. This gruel is a delicate blend, so thin that drinking it might be more satisfying than eating it. You wonder if slurping through a straw would be considered holy, and should you uncover the scavenged hunk of bread that proudly perches precariously in your bowl, it may feel like discovering a long-lost artifact. Is it stale? Perhaps. Hard enough to be a potential weapon? Undoubtedly. This culinary miracle is your gateway to passability. It could either be your saving grace, or a rock-solid reason to stop going to morning prayers altogether, fearing the repercussions of choking mid-sentence while praising the Lord. But wait, the monks don't just stare vacantly at their bowls. Oh no, there's also a side of chanting to accompany the morning ministrations. Monks are known for their deep, sonorous voices, perfectly pitched to drown out the sound of conflicted taste buds. With each spoonful, the elevation of the spirit rises, as does the risk of unholy sounds fizzling up from your throat. You nibble on a piece of stale bread, while somewhere in the corner, Brother Gregory quietly debates the merits of holy bread versus whole bread, an argument that could erupt into a crisis of faith. As each monk bobbles his head in blissful ignorance of flavour, it becomes painfully clear. Gruel is not designed to fill the stomach, but rather to prepare one's spirit for a day filled with labour, prayer, and existential dread. Moments pass like hours. Even your hunger feels like a looming shadow. The conversation starts to swell quietly, like those timid summer bees that buzz around your head and slowly aggravate your nerves. "Did you hear about Brother Himpert's experience during yesterday's chapel?" one monk whispers. "This better not involve him thinking the gruel was bread again," chimes in another with a chuckle. Laughter ripples around the table like contagious colic, and just like that, the breakfast scene morphs from bland to boisterous, with jokes exchanged and a new camaraderie forged over the simple meal of misery. With a twinge of hope to lighten the mood, brothers begin to share stories of past feasts, detailing the delightful day when an apple was found, one apple, mind you, that surged excitement throughout the cloister for a week. Suddenly, that spoon of gruel doesn't seem so dull when set against the culinary adventures of the past. There you sit, gripped with the knowledge that breakfast might not have been a champion's meal, but it served its purpose. You've survived another morning at the monastery, and perhaps, just perhaps, the struggles of gruel can be the foundation for a great story later on. With your belly grumbling and spirit lifted, you take one last sip of that watery disaster before rising for the day, one step closer to accessing the humour hidden behind all that thin, questionable broth. Breakfast of champions? Well, at least you're ready to endure whatever the universe throws your way next, starting with the next communal prayer session. Morning prayers. Just when you thought you could sleep in, it's time to bust out those vocal cords and remind the heavens you exist. Groups of monks will gather, and it's a competition of sorts, a melodious battle where the winner gets, well, God's attention, and maybe a nod from the abbot if he's feeling generous. Get ready for vocal exercises that sound suspiciously like an angry choir of cats. As the sun timidly peeks through the cold stone walls, it's time for the sacred chant. Forget your regular morning jazz playlist. This is more of a medieval cacophony, with tones straying between operatic highs and the very depths of guttural growls. Seriously, have you ever heard someone try to reach a high note only to end up sounding like a goat trapped in a wind tunnel? It's like a symphony of spiritual desperation, and you're right in the thick of it. The monks stand shoulder to shoulder, clad in robes that haven't seen a proper wash in the last few winters, because who has time for laundry when you're deep in memorising sacred texts and praying for a decent patch of vegetables? Now, you may think to yourself, how hard can singing be? But this isn't just any karaoke night. These monks are attempting to summon the divine with their vocal prowess, which hopefully brings heaven down to earth, or at least distracts you from the fact that there's no breakfast in sight. Those chants are packed with solemnity, a sense of urgency, and a sprinkle of desperation, much like the feeling you get when you realise you've run out of coffee halfway through your morning routine. And here's where it gets interesting. Each monk has his own unique chant style. Some opt for the deep, booming resonances that could rattle the rafters, while others sway gently towards melodious tones, creating an almost celestial atmosphere, albeit sometimes resembling a mating call. You can practically visualize the abbot trying to maintain his composure as one poor monk, trying to hit that high note, ends up sounding like he's being chased by an angry goose. Bless you, brother, but maybe leave the high notes to the pros, he thinks to himself, shaking his head in bemused disbelief. Then comes the intonation practice. Because nothing says, let's connect with God, like attempting to hold an awkwardly elongated vowel sound that seems to stretch into infinity. And woe betide the monk who dares to falter. With weights hanging from their throat, they'll face the wrath of the chanting coach, who's far less forgiving than your average high school music teacher. It's a relentless cycle of praise and purgatory, intended to mould your vocal cords into a divine instrument capable of reaching the ears of the Almighty, or at least getting the attention of a passing friar. Amidst this vocal chaos, you might wonder, what happens to those who truly, and I mean truly, shine during morning prayers? Well, let's just say the praise pie of their weekly duties gets a significant upgrade. They might be given the esteemed role of leading the next prayer session, flashing that "I'm a big deal" smile while their peers give them the side eye, silently plotting to out-chant them in the next round. Jealousy can fuel incredible choral talents, and before long it turns into an all-out singing brawl. Who knew monks had such range, both in pitch and in rivalry? And of course, there's always that one monk who thinks he's a gift to Gregorian chant, a real show-off who's about to unleash a soaring solo that rivals opera legends of the time. The other monks cross their fingers and hope for mercy as he launches into a soul-stirring rendition of The Last Supper, only to realise halfway through he's lost the plot and is now singing about the virtues of turnips. Eventually the chants reach their climax, each monk pushing their limits, believing that the higher the pitch, the closer they are to heaven. Words swirl in the morning air until silence. It crashes upon you like the realization that the singing was just a prelude to facing the day. As the last notes fade, there's a palpable sense of accomplishment, camaraderie, and a huge dose of relief. But little do they know, they'll have to do it all over again tomorrow, early wake-ups and all. So, as you prepare for your own morning ritual, perhaps it's worth considering. While you may sip coffee in quiet solitude, remember the wild symphony of the medieval monks trying their best to resonate with the divine, with varying levels of success and great enthusiasm. If that doesn't fill you with gratitude for your modern comforts, I'm not sure what will. Let's talk about sleep, or as the monks call it, the time we spend avoiding bedbugs. Why is that straw mattress so appealing? Perhaps because body odour and discomfort are practically synonyms here. Between the pungent scent of sweat-soaked wool and the constant scratching from invisible bugs, you might yearn for a plush pillow, or at least a fond memory of one. Can you even imagine dreaming about the king while lying in the equivalent of a rat-infested haystack? And that's if you can even manage to sleep at all. Night after night, sleeping arrangements in a medieval monastery consist of rows of straw stuffed into rough burlap sacks. One size fits all. But let's be real, it fits absolutely nobody well. As you snuggle into your bed, a phrase that can loosely be defined given the lack of comfort, it's a reality check on how far we've come. Would those 100-count Egyptian cotton sheets even make it past the first monastery's check? During the nighttime hours, the acceptable muffling of groans would give an award-winning performance artist a run for their money. If you're like most monks, your bed is placed alongside 5 of your fellow brethren, sharing warmth and maybe, if you've played your cards right, some remaining scraps of dignity. With so many people in close quarters, who needs an alarm clock? The morning rooster will awaken everyone about as subtly as a drunken bear crashing through the dining hall. As you fade into uneasy slumber, you might find yourself trying to count sheep, only to find yourself falling asleep to the beautiful lullaby of someone else's snoring. It's an experience that can easily turn into a competition of sorts. Can you endure the serenade of groans while dodging the occasional sleepy elbow? It's the battle of the straw beds, and guess what? Everyone loses. Let's discuss the bedding materials. Straw, while cheaper and eternally available, comes with a host of unfortunate side effects. As you lie on your bumpy mattress, you'll realise that straw comes with a little extra texture. That's right. A nightly exfoliation brought to you by the medieval straw species, not to mention the added benefit of attracting every flea and bug in a 3-mile radius, because nothing is quite as cosy as sharing your bed with vermin looking for a new apartment. Ever tried flipping over for a more comfortable position? Good luck. Turning the mattress over is a Herculean task that requires a small army. You'd think lifting a burlap sack of straw would be simple, until you discover it's more like trying to flip an uncooperative pancake. It's a wonder anyone gets any real sleep at all. Dare I say, it's enough to make you sympathise with the tortured knight slumbering next door after another long day of jousting. If you're lucky, the Brotherhood might have splurged on an upgrade, a wool blanket. The wool blanket, as warm as it is itchy, sometimes resembles the gift that keeps on giving, if you're looking for an allergy. As you throw it over yourself, it's like wrapping yourself in a combination of goats and relentless scratching. Why don't you just pour a few honeybees into your robe while you're at it? But alas, this is life in the monastery. Embracing discomfort is not just encouraged, it's practically a rite of passage. Let's also take a moment for that satisfying nighttime ritual of preparing for bed. Forget about a nighttime skincare routine. Your only concern is making sure that whatever stray bits of food don't end up stuck in the hay alongside you for breakfast. Let's hope Brother Jacques doesn't roll over too suddenly, because that's like a surprise catapult ride into chaos. Now, dipping into the dreamscape should be smooth sailing, but wait. Let's talk about the true barriers to sweet dreams. Ever try meditation? Good luck focusing on your inner Buddha when Brother Ambrose's snoring sounds like a dying cow. And don't even get me started on that one rogue monk who believes that chanting softly to himself is an act of holiness. Yeah, that nightingale has got nothing on him. After a night of tossing and turning, praying for the ability to sleep through the tensions, you'll eventually sound the wake-up call by rolling off your straw bed, landing awkwardly on the floor. Now, there's nothing quite like your morning backache to remind you why you might need a new approach to rest, or just perhaps a different life altogether. So here's the thing. While sleeping in a medieval monastery might not be a 5-star experience, it's a rite of passage that shapes the spirit, tests patience, and sometimes leads to surprisingly creative midnight thoughts on whether or not sleeping in a pile of hay should be a competitive Olympic sport. If only those good days of cosy mattresses could be had. But tonight, just take a deep breath, friends. You might find comfort in knowing it's all part of the grand monastic struggle, right alongside a good sense of humour and a relentless spirit of resilience. If you think modern plumbing is overrated, think again. The nearest privy is a wooden shack that doubles as a group therapy session. Ever tried sharing an outhouse with other sleepy monks? While trying not to inhale the aroma of last week's bean soup, because nothing says sacred silence, quite like an awkward moment when your neighbour asks how your evening prayers went while you're, handling business. Picture this. You shuffle into the creaky wooden structure, bracing yourself for an olfactory assault that would make a billy goat cry. It's dim, dank, and probably home to a family of questionable insects that might take out a contract on your life if you disturb their peace. The philosophy of the monastery may have you contemplating the divine, but it's hard to be eloquent when you're locked in a battle against a stray rat that seems more interested in your sandals than your soul. And let's talk about the seating arrangements. An irredeemably splintery bench over a deep hole you cross your fingers doesn't lead to Hades itself. You'd think a moment of relief would be rather private, but this is no Starbucks restroom. It's a co-ed affair with a string of awkward exchanges as monks come and go. How about that sermon last week, eh? Becomes a desperate attempt to distract from the inevitable sound of nature as it actively protests your existence. Ever tried to keep a conversation going while simultaneously attempting to muffle the noises of your digestive system? Welcome to medieval multitasking. On the plus side, all that communal sitting creates a unique bond. You know everyone's history through the stooping trade, as you might hear tales of which blemish brings the most embarrassment to humble beings. Did Brother Thomas have an extra helping at lunch? Well, congratulations, he'll be spooling inspiring stories about his life choices for hours. Privacy is a luxury few can afford, and there's soul-bearing that happens in there that might give Freud a run for his money. Let's not kid ourselves. The cleaning situation is far from ideal either. The toilet paper your modern-day self takes for granted. That's merely a figment of your imagination. You have options like dried leaves, straw, or, if you're particularly fortunate, a discarded wool sock. Ever attempted to wipe with straw? It's like trying to remove a sticker with a chainsaw. Feel the burn takes on a whole new meaning. The real art is figuring out the cleanest scraps, which is perhaps the only time eeny meeny miny mo comes in handy. Oh, and if you think the toilet is a place for some private reflection, think again. There's no escaping Brother Peter's unsolicited advice. Have you prayed for forgiveness today, he'll ask. Because I think the Almighty has a lot to discuss with you. The nerve. Trust me, when you're contemplating penance for the last 2 days' worth of gruel, you don't need judgment echoing off those wooden walls. Eventually it's time to brave the world outside and accept your fate, whatever that may be. You emerge like a sanctioned monk superhero, sporting the grace of an awkward duck on ice. In the real world they'd put a cape on you. But here, you're merely trying to avoid stepping into the swamp of your neighbour's poor aim. The streets aren't paved for comfort. They're a treacherous maze where you pray your luck holds until the next round of toilet roulette. And there's always the excitement of running the gauntlet of gossip should you encounter other monks post-summit. How was your, experience, they'll ask, smirking with the kind of knowing glint in their eye that says, I saw you struggling. Sure, they're pure of heart, etc., but none of these guys are on the fast track to canonization in your book. So, while you may think twice about grumbling over that fancy bathroom in your house, it's a good reminder. There are far worse things than a toilet seat and some modest privacy. So, the next time you find yourself racing for the bathroom, just know that even our medieval brothers still had to handle life's messes, one not-so-quiet moment at a time. And may your next graceful retreat be more about spiritual enlightenment and less about navigating the pious pitfalls of multi-stall management. With the crack of dawn comes the monastic schedule, which is about as flexible as a rusty hinge. Up at 4 a.m, a mystery gruel breakfast followed by hours of manual labour, prayers, writing, and, oh, look, more prayers. Ever tried to stay awake while pondering the mysteries of the universe in a cold stone chapel? Spoiler, it's hard. Picture this. Dozens of monks packed into a dimly lit hall, straining to keep their eyes open as the abbot drones on in the background, reciting chapters from a hefty holy book that honestly could benefit from a good editing session. Who knew that spirituality could come with the side effects of a major sleep deficit? And then there's breakfast. You thought gruel in the morning was just a myth. You're mistaken, my friend. It's the real deal. thinner than the plot of a medieval romance novel and served lukewarm, straight from the cauldron of despair. Imagine yourself staring at your bowl, wondering if that might actually be the remnants of last week's pottage, and praying it doesn't wiggle as you take a spoonful. You think of all the culinary marvels the world outside could offer: succulent berries, fluffy pancakes, anything but this tasteless concoction that could barely comfort a starving rat. Once you've somehow swallowed that questionable meal, it's time to dive into the daily responsibilities, happily disguised as manual labour. Ever think of working the fields with a bunch of fellow monks as something like a medieval group workout session? A little bit of prayer, a little bit of sweat, and a lot of shared misery. You'll be digging, hoeing, or maybe even hauling water, all while managing to dodge the questions about whether you found inner peace in those lettuce rows. Spoiler: you haven't. But wait, when do you get to stop sweating and pray? Well, worry not. After a grueling stint in the field, you'll head straight back into the chapel, where the air feels colder than the bottom of a well. There, the chanting begins, loud, repeated, rhythmic, and good luck outlasting the wearisome Gloria in excelsis Deo that seems to echo endlessly against stone walls. It's all joy and purpose until your knee starts cramping from that awkward kneeling position, and all you can think is, why can't we kneel on a pillow for once? Spoiler alert, there are no cushions for the devoted. Now comes the respite, if you can call it that. In between prayers and meditations, you hope for a second to catch your breath. But as fate would have it, you rediscover that distinct aroma wafting over from the kitchen, a smell resembling burnt shoe leather. That's right, it's lunch. Now you'll want to brace yourself, because what lies ahead is yet another round of creative culinary choices. Think of stale bread crusts, some soggy vegetable stew competing for attention with a far too resilient cabbage, and, because we care, more mystery meat. If you're lucky, it's not rat. And yet, somehow you muster the strength to return to the fields, armed with your wooden tools and a lingering hope that eventually the sun will shine on you and your day will end in peace. But beware. As the sun sets and your work winds down, it'll be time for evening prayers. Yes, more of them. Expect little downtime as you and your fellow monks settle back into the stone chapel, nervously wondering if today's dinners have dealt you an unfortunate gastronomical consequence of some kind. You know it'll be the same bedtime story you've heard 1,000 times, followed by yet more prayers, of course. Eventually, when the clock strikes rather late, it's a medieval thing, time is relative, you can finally lay down on your straw mattress, now infused with the scent of hard labour and remnants of that lovely gruel. Close your eyes and try to drift off, but good luck fighting the restless thoughts of how tomorrows are met with new demands for more work and more prayers. Just pray the rooster doesn't set up an early alarm to ruin your one remaining chance at blissful sleep. So there you have it, the whirlwind life of a medieval monk. A saga of hard work, endless prayers, and more than a few I could use a nap moments. It's a lifestyle that would make anyone rethink the whole noble pursuit of spirituality. Now that's something to ponder as you drift off to sleep. You'd think silence is peaceful, right? Welcome to the carefully orchestrated symphony of silence in a monastery. Trying to communicate through hand gestures becomes an Olympic event. If you accidentally cough during prayers, you might as well have declared war on the entire congregation. In a place where a pin dropping is akin to a bomb going off, even the faintest rustle of a shopping bag might send your fellow monks scattering like startled cats. They'll stare at you as if you've just invoked the most heinous of blasphemies with the mere sound of crinkling parchment. Picture it. You're in a chapel, surrounded by a dozen monks, all with the demeanour of ancient stone statues, and suddenly, in a moment of sheer panic inspired by an itch, you make a slight noise. The The collective gasp sounds like a choir of horrified angels, and just like that, you're the star of a one-act play titled The Accidental Disruptor. Good luck restoring peace in a place where even taking a deep breath is risky business. Want to ask someone if they received your last letter? Forget about it. Communicating subtly requires more skill than you've exhibited since your last game of charades. Now, speaking of charades, let's talk about the silent meals, which are basically minute long moments of awkwardness, punctuated by muffled grunts of approval. Imagine huddling over bowls of gruel, which tastes like disappointment in its purest form, while trying to communicate the essentials of existence to the monk across the table. A challenge that only magnifies when your spoon drops with all the grace of a ravenous hippo. To make it worse, everyone watches, silently judging your clumsiness like you're auditioning for a role in a medieval farce. What's worse is that everyone is hungry, and the last thing they want is the sweet sound of a clattering spoon disrupting their grainy evening. But monks, being masters of silent despair, have mastered the art of solemn meal etiquette. It's like a very boring version of a food contest, where you're all competing to see who can chew the most quietly. You've got to think of it as a culinary stealth mission. Your mouth is merely a trap, spring-loaded to make the tiniest sound, while the overcooked bread you're gnawing on is fighting back like a rebellious ex. And then, of course, there's the nightly prayer service. Here, silence transforms into a pressure cooker of expectations. Picture monks lined up like the world's most disciplined choir, enunciating prayers with impeccable intensity. They're so committed that when they accidentally pop a knee, you half expect them to continue on like nothing happened. Life goes on after all, despite the festering pains of old age. Perhaps it is the only moment when their inner thoughts bubble to the surface, about how they hadn't realised that asceticism would entail arthritis at 40. The tension really rises whenever an abbot clears his throat. That minor, innocent disruption transforms the chamber into an arena of holding your breath. The very air feels charged. Will he launch into a sermon so lengthy that even the candles give out before he wraps it up? The anxiety is palpable. Friendship and camaraderie are put on the back burner because right now you're simply trying not to lose your mind over the threats of eternity posed by the abbot's next words. But sometimes, amidst the seriousness of silence, the laymen unsteadily attempt to introduce a rebellious spirit. Ever played a game of monk poker? It's played with between the villagers and the herbs from the garden. The goal? To understand stealthy hand signals while not betraying your bets to the celibate monks watching from the distance. You sip your watered-down ale with a steely determination behind those secret hand gestures and cryptic looks. Good luck trying to keep a straight face when your hand signals practically scream of desperate longing for an ale-flavoured rebellion. Eventually, the conclusion of the hour brings you back to reality, where a comical mix of exhaustion and relief floods through the room. Silence is both a blessing and a curse in the monastery, a whimsical dance between peace and pent-up expressions of curiosity. And whether glory awaits you in the afterlife for maintaining your stealthy demeanour, or the abbot feels your ribs creaking under the pressure of restraint, one thing remains certain. In this cloistered realm, you've surely managed to get a tantalising glimpse into the cosmic silence. Damn, if those candles don't feel like a torch being waved in your face. Welcome to the world of medieval illumination, where artists frantically try to recreate biblical stories while semi-permanent wax drips down their fingers like a poorly timed cosmetic mishap. Can you imagine mixing colours while avoiding the ever-present temptation to dip your brush into that waxy disaster? The scent of melting tallow mingles with stale air, creating an ambience that could only be described as a DIY taco stand gone horribly wrong. The pressure is on, my friend. Each monk is tasked with producing divine artwork, with the added challenge of working under the watchful gaze of higher-ups who consider every missed detail equivalent to a sin worthy of eternal damnation. Picture yourself in a cloistered scriptorium, a place resembling a combination of a library and a medieval workshop that went terribly against ergonomic design. You're surrounded by other monks, some wielding quills with the grace of a pigeon attempting the cha-cha. They scratch away while flinging harsh accusations of inattention at one another. "Brother Athelstan, that grapevine looks more like a dead slug." Talk about light-hearted banter. The atmosphere is palpable with a certain tension that puts the old and wrinkled parchment on edge. The art of illumination, drawing with precision and painting exquisite pictures, isn't just for show. This art is crucial to making religious texts visually appealing, perhaps a little eye candy for the congregation to get them excited about the usual doctrine. Who wouldn't feel spiritually elevated by an enthralling picture of St. Bernard wrestling a demon that looks suspiciously like that one guy who stole your lunch? But here's the kicker. Creating these glorious pieces is laborious and requires an attention to detail that could give any modern-day graphic designer a nervous breakdown. Blood, sweat, and a strategically timed sneeze could easily ruin a page adorned with golden leaf and hand-ground lapis lazuli, all for the glory of God. The irony is you can scarcely mess up your own bread without being punished, but smear a prayer page with a bit of ink and watch the inkwell get hectic. And what's the deal with materials? Ever tried grinding your own pigments using minerals and colourful flowers? Oh, it's delightful until that ochre pool morphs into a disaster zone that looks like it was blessed by a particularly unskilled apprentice. And just when you think you've achieved the perfect shade of something resembling heaven, Father Benedict strolls in with all the subtlety of a galloping ox, eyeing your palette with the guile of a parent scrutinising every school report card. "My boy," he says, "surely the sky doesn't look like a mouldy soup. Do it again." Let's also consider the joy of social interactions in the scriptorium. While artists attempt to paint their religious muse, there's Brother Oswald, bragging about his latest and greatest creation. You know, the one that just came to him in a visitation from the Holy Spirit. "Sure, brother. Now excuse me as I wrestle with this candle that just dripped molten wax directly onto my parchment, while I'm experiencing an epiphany about hand cramps from writing in Latin." Meanwhile, you're trying not to outwardly scoff at the other shapes he supposedly captured of divine love, which look more like an angry carrot wearing what could only be described as a papal hat. Alas, the beauty of illumination is not just aesthetic, it's the major competition. Who can create the most dazzling illustrations while also keeping a straight face in the struggle to stay focused? Imagine a judge's panel consisting of monks examining work. Ah yes, Brother Egbert, splendid poignancy in your depiction of Noah's Ark, but alas, you have drawn the unicorn quite crooked. The art of humility sits conveniently on the shelf, collecting dust. But the final work is nothing short of incredible. Gold leaf, vibrant pigments, and the perseverance of 1,000 penances combine into breathtaking pieces. It's a wonder of medieval technology that could repent sins through meticulous detail. So while you can praise that particular craft, just know that behind those breathtaking pages is a mess of accidents, waxy hands, less than perfect feelings of artistic angst, and an ambience of darkly comic desperation. Illumination in medieval times was child's play, if that child was tasked with doodling their homework while negotiating life and death, along with a brush set that appeared to have been looted from a cave. Now all that's left is for you to ask yourself, can you survive the twisted artistry and downright tortured existence it took to create these heavenly works? Because every medieval monk will tell you, art may be divine, but the process is downright torturous. What's life without a few wax burns and regrets? Let's tackle the age-old debate. What takes priority? Work or worship? Spoiler alert, it's always worship. Ever tried explaining your lack of motivation to a bunch of well-meaning monks while clutching a shovel? The intense guilt might haunt you into your next lifetime, or at least until lunch. Picture this. The sun is barely peeking over the horizon, and the bell tolls like a relentless alarm clock, beckoning you to surrender your dreams of 5 more minutes. The other monks are already rising, discussing the merits of prayer versus physical labour, as if this were an Olympic event. Spoiler alert, the medal always goes to prayer. So here you are, groggily gathering your belongings, debating whether to stealthily skip morning chores, and wondering if the other monks will judge you for attempting to repeat last night's grace in an effort to keep sleeping. As you drag your weary bones toward the chapel, you can't help but notice that everything in the monastery seems designed to keep your mind off any sort of rebellious thought, like sneaking back to bed. A long line of chanting monks, yep, that's the equivalent of a medieval cheerleading squad, urging you to feel spiritually fulfilled while your joints creak and your legs scream for mercy. You take a deep breath, trying to calm your nerves, reminding yourself that this is in fact a socially acceptable way to start the day, sacrificing personal comfort for the glory of God. Then comes the question, why has no one ever conducted a study on how long a monk can chant without losing their mind, or what the sleep-deprived, grumbling peasant does before breakfast? Maybe a nice breakfast of gruel, or, if you're lucky, a filtered version of last week's honey batch. Yes, that's right. You may be dreaming about a nice crispy bacon strip, but in the monk's world it's all about prayer breakfast, which involves baked bread and wait for it. More prayer. Every meal is a test of patience and faith, reminding you that in the monastery, reverence is served with a side of monotony. Now, if you thought manual labour was easy, think again. Imagine spending your waking hours indoctrinated in labour, hours of ploughing fields, gathering herbs or stoking fires, but the thesaurus informs you it's all done to serve God. Is that really a sufficient excuse when the weather's mildewy and potentially decides that at some point it's going to drizzle or downright pour all day? Talk about divine retribution. Also, is there a secret hierarchy of tasks? Does harvesting cabbages earn you more divine points than, say, cleaning latrines? The monks love to keep you guessing, but they'll gladly hand you the shovel while they chant into the wind, acting all spiritual. Enter the abbot, the self-appointed heavyweight who has one eye on farming and the other on biblical authority. You can feel the weight of his stare like a foot-long cheeseboard at a communion service, unbearably heavy. You muster up enough courage to share your thoughts on the weather's ill-timed cruelty against your sweaty brows. He twists your words like a monk twisting lace into patterns, usually ending with a sermon on faith, hope, and grueling work ethic. Your resolve crumbles faster than a day-old biscuit, and suddenly the only thing you want is to pray for yourself, deliverance from debris, and perhaps a miracle sandwich to get you through the next few hours. But don't worry. Amidst the labour, a glimpse of fun breaks through the gloom. There's a surprising camaraderie among the monks. Gone are the ties of society as you gather around while striking a pose in prayer, trying not to think about being covered in hay and sweat. Games of prayerful dodgeball might just save your sanity. Though you have to keep the spirit of competition somewhat pious, you start tossing around ideas of how to make chants more harmonious, while plotting subversive schemes to trick the groundskeeper into giving you a second slice of bread. It's all very sacred, of course. Eventually, as the sun begins its downward descent and the shadows whisper secrets of the evening, you'll find yourself weaving through the prayer gathering, more at peace than when you awoke. You begin to accept the paradox, the constant switch between sacred rituals and earthly toils. You realise that work can sometimes become worship, not through resentment, but by finding joy in the trials. Each task is not just holy ground, but a battle against tediousness. In the end, as you lay your weary head upon a pile of straw that somehow feels more comfortable than it ought to, whispering an almost grateful prayer to the roof above, you embrace the notion that even amid toil, the spirit of laughter can still guide you home. In the eternal struggle between work and worship, you may yet find the key to navigating the joys and the absolute absurdity of life as a medieval monk. And maybe, just maybe, you'll embody that humorous blend of spirituality without losing sanity, as you learn that despite the rigorous demands, you have the audacity to dream a little in the midst of it all. Snack time. Oh, the temptation! After all the labour, gruel is about as unfulfilling as a dead parrot, and wouldn't you know it, those leftover loaves of bread look pretty inviting. If only you could silently pilfer a slice without getting caught in the act. Everything from a slice of bread to a crumb is a carefully negotiated truce with the abbot who believes in the sanctity of grain. You see, in the world of medieval monks, every morsel is a small miracle, and the thought of stealing bread is practically a sacred sin, yet a sin that's nearly impossible to resist. The aroma of fresh-baked bread wafts through the chapel, each loaf practically calling out to you like a siren song, promising a moment of culinary joy amidst the sea of monotonous meals. It's lunchtime, and the monastic dining hall isn't exactly Michelin-starred cuisine. No, it resembles something between a medieval fast food joint and a vat of regret. Before you know it, you've abandoned your scruples and ceremoniously entered the great bread heist. You eye that ungodly loaf nestled near the end of the long table, its crust golden brown, the insides whispering tales of glorious carbohydrates. However, your fellow monks are just a prayer away, and they emanate an aura of zealous righteousness that could put even your ambitions to shame. As you attempt your stealthy maneuver to the table, you step on a creaky floorboard. Classic rookie move. Instantly all heads swivel in unison, and the abbot's eyes narrow like a hawk spotting its prey. Your heart races. Is the bread worth a near immediate excommunication? Probably not, but considering your diet mostly revolves around that sad mixture of water and barley, desperate times call for desperate measures. You sigh internally, realizing your bread ambition may have to wait until the next evening when they all fall asleep drunk off mediocre wine. In the brief panic of remorse, you covertly observe the dining hall atmosphere. Conversation circles around pious matters, tales of saints, and the occasional critique on the poor selection of vegetables from the garden. You can't help but envision your fellow monks sitting around, wasting away in their coarsely woven robes, while all you want is to experience the joy of a warm, toasted piece of bread before it becomes errantly enlisted as the family pet's chew toy. And while hunger claws at your insides, your mind races back to some of the ingenious heists of the past. Brother Benedict, the renowned bread bandit from the previous autumn, practically turned the kitchen into a stage for his capers. Sneaking under the watchful eyes of the abbey's novice monks, he'd charm his way into the kitchen's heart, distract the head cook with wide-eyed innocence, and vanish with several loaves tucked under his burlap robe. They found him a week later, feasting on his spoils in the garden, surrounded by nature's watchful gaze, the stutter in his step betraying his betrayal. Of course, attempts like this lead to divine retribution, as you remember all too well. The first day Brother David attempted to pull off a similar act, his expertly planned heist ended in him getting stuck in the pantry for hours as he devoured an entire week's worth of leftovers. When he finally emerged, he looked like a pumpkin, one too stuffed to roll away from the kitchen's scorn. The rumours of the Great Pantry debacle still circulate among the novices, instilling both caution and inspiration, forging legends of mighty bread bandits in their wake. Meanwhile, The clock continues to tick, and your rumbling stomach feels like a siren blaring in the midst of prayer. You return to your seat and prepare to muster every ounce of patience, while the guy next to you munches audibly on the only remaining bread crust, his eyes glazed over with the satisfaction of a satisfied pug. Oh, the audacity! You can hear the crackle of the crust echoing through your deepest ambitions, and the juxtaposition between your pottage and his crusty delight sends your thoughts spiralling into a state of sugar-charged fantasy. Finally, as the priest concludes the afternoon blessing, you strike a deal with your own stomach. It's now or never. You prepare for the heist of your dreams. You're going for the untouched bread on the far end of the dining table, the prime piece of crusty perfection, the bread that could make every hour of gruel worthwhile. Luckily for you, the great distraction is set to arrive. The new novice monk, innocent as lamb and slightly less coordinated. He walks too close to the precariously stacked tall pitcher of mead, and, well, let's just say nobody witnesses a small bread miracle in the moment when grape juice meets clumsy foot. In the chaos, you seize the moment, transforming your pious ambitions into a fleeting lift of the holy loaf. You've successfully pilfered the bread. You sit back down, heart racing, a ghost of a smile dancing on your lips. Today, survival has worn the mask of an unholy snack. Welcome to monk life, saving souls one slice at a time. Midday prayers, perfect for napping or reflecting on your life choices. All those medieval monks are gathered together, kneeling in quiet contemplation. But the real challenge? Staying awake and focused as your eyelids start floating like sails in a calm sea. You'll find yourself dreaming about gruel rather than engaging with the divine. As the sun seeps through the high windows of the stone chapel, casting dappled patterns on the worn wooden floor, you might find that the soothing ambience is just a plush invitation to be whisked away to dreamland. Ever tried to maintain an air of reverence while stifling a yawn that threatens to echo through the entire hall? It's a skill most monks have perfected, akin to sneaking a snack without being caught. You catch a glimpse of Brother Egbert dozing softly by your side, his head bobbing like a drunken turkey. His rosary slips through his fingers. What a foolproof weapon in the battle against slumber! It's like playing a high-stakes game of who can stay awake the longest, backed by the fear that if you fall asleep you might wake up just in time to be told you've missed the next prayer, or, for the bravest souls, be shushed by a light rap on the knuckles from Brother Wilfred, the chaplain with the gentlest of reprimands. As the chanting rises and falls like the tide, your thoughts drift to the meal you had. Was it really a blessing to eat porridge again, or a form of medieval torture? You could swear the bowl grinned at you in your reverie, mocking your choices. It's amazing how consuming the daily monotony can seem when you're supposed to be in a holy moment. You slowly shuffle closer to the wall, seeking support to stay upright, when suddenly the abbot begins to speak, echoing prayers that swirl around like an unexpected fog. It's at this point you realise the words of Scripture have become a surreal bedtime story. In the beginning, you can already foresee the end, where you're sprawled across the stone, drooling in your dreams while angels giggle at your misfortune. Ah, but wait. That's Brother Timothy speaking with the fervour of a man trying to convince you that today's feast is worth every grain of porridge. The Scripture says to meditate on these things, and for a moment you're convinced that not falling asleep might be a statement of holy devotion. But, alas, the real test is whether or not you can muster enough energy when prayer gets duller than an uninspired sermon about turnips. Hours tick on, and even the flickering candles seem to lose motivation. They sputter, flickering in rhythm with the monk's heavy eyelids. You imagine creating a monastic Olympics challenge, where the last man standing gets to consume an extra piece of bread, how many would enter? 20? 50? Or would it be just you and Brother Casper trying to overthrow the sleepy hierarchy? But fear not. Just when the sleepy fog threatens to envelop your consciousness completely, the abbot's voice rises like a trumpet, resonating deeply and resonantly, fetching your focus like a fishing line pulling you from the depths. The captivating tales of saints and their miraculous deeds rise from his lips. It's the true essence of monastic prayers, painted in the dramatic tones one might use to narrate the latest gossip. You might begin to wonder if the saint of the day, Martin of Tours perhaps, would forgive your snoozing blunders. Imagine explaining to his holy visage why you spent your midday prayer dreaming of tossed salads instead of focusing on the divine aspects of his life. Forgive me, Brother Martin, for I have napped. As the session draws to a close, and not a moment too soon for the grueling task of keeping your eyes open, you finally exhale and straighten your spine as the final Amen reverberates across the chapel. The sweet relief of freedom is tangible. The familiar rustle of robes and the shuffle of feet as the assembly file out feels like being released from prison. You have survived the midday meditation, another notch in your belt of monastic prowess. But the question lingers in the air. Was your time spent truly divine, or just an opportunity for dreams about feasting on fresh vegetables? Regardless, as you emerge into the sunlight, a smile creeps across your face. You may have cracked the code to this whole monk life. Work hard, pray hard, and sneak naps whenever possible. In the end, perhaps the greatest lesson from midday prayers is that even in the weight of tradition, a little levity could go a long way. Welcome to the life of the monk gardener, a noble calling. Growing your own herbs might sound idyllic, but have you tried weeding a field while debating scripture? Believe me, nicking your arm on a thorn bush while questioning the meaning of life isn't exactly a spiritual strategy. Picture this. It's early spring, the sun peeks over the hills like some eager churchgoer who just can't wait for the morning service. Your fellow monks are staring intently at their gardening plots, praying they'll find divine guidance in the carrot patch. Only problem? Those carrots are sitting under more weeds than an overgrown backyard during a heatwave. As you step outside in your robe, which, let's be real, is much too long and definitely too heavy for any honest gardening, you can't escape the sensation that you're about to be grappled by a cornucopia of thorns. Why is it that every plant seems to think it can defend itself against a monk? Snip, snip, nip, and ouch! Is this what our forebears envisioned when they decided to plant a garden for sustenance? Mayhem ensues as you tumble through rows of mints and oreganos, emerging with a new life mantra. Blessed are the garden's true enemies. Just imagine the delicious irony of tending to the very herbs that flavour your meagre gruel. Every time you reach for a sprig of basil, you can't shake the feeling you're really just in it for the revolt against tasteless porridge. The culinary competition may be fierce, considering the possibility that if you accidentally overwater the sage, you might inadvertently summon the lunchtime screaming fury of your fellow monks. Watering feels like a sacred rite, and yet a slight misdirection leads to an all-out turf war for those crucial drops. And then there's the joy of crop rotation, a concept not just for the farmers, but for the monastic elite. It's as simple as rearranging your prize veggies and herbs to keep them from starving each other. Compassion for the plants takes on a whole new meaning here. Oh dear onions, let me gently place you beside those timid lettuces so you can share your thoughts. Now that's great dinner conversation, right? Also, plot twist. If you listen closely enough, the tomatoes might just be gossiping about how they're the only thing worth eating this week. But truly, the monk gardener's life isn't merely about managing weeds and discussing crop diversity. It's about survival in a world where food options are as scarce as a good night's sleep. When you're praying over the garden, are you also daydreaming that no little pest will steal your bounty? It's a gamble, balancing faith and hope against the pests that seem to have formed a strategic alliance against you. You feel less like an angel of providence and more like a glorified bug catcher in a ragged robe. So here's a thought. Imagine if the monks decided to hold a blessing of the bugs day instead of endless pent-up prayers. Who knows, you might just get a hybrid carrot named after you. Let's not forget the seasons. Summer brings forth not just flowers, but sweat. As your back aches beneath the warmth of the sun, you exchange glances with your fellow gardeners and wonder if they've ever regretted the calling. But hey, at least it's not winter, right? You'd think gardening in the cold would be equally appealing. There's nothing like facing frostbite while gently coaxing your radishes towards the warmth of the sun. A true test of endurance. And when evening comes, the hard-earned harvest gets processed in the grand kitchen, where those divine vegetables become the once glorified pottage served at dinner. You settle down at the table with your fellow monks, plates piled high with offering, and a good dose of regret that your creations failed to elevate the evening meal beyond a glorified vegetable broth. Eating what you've planted feels like a punishment trial for all your gardening transgressions, but nobody dares complain. After all, it's all part of divine providence, and maybe just a sprinkle of monkish humour to get you through the day. In the end, nothing says survival quite like a harvest that could spark joyful laughter or ritualistic shaming, depending on how the evening unfolds. Welcome to the wild world of monastic gardening, where dirt may cling to your robes, but those who toil the soil do so in the name of God. The next time you slice a carrot, remember, beneath the sweet taste lies a history of thorns, faith, and a whispered prayer for better gruel. Ever feel like saying grace means making the group guilty about everything you ate last week? Bless this food, dear Lord, and please, let me repent for using that extra helping of gruel last week. Solid strategies to repenting, monks. In the dim light of the refectory, take a moment to picture this. A long wooden table groaning under the weight of bowls filled with what can only be described as a pasty blend of leftovers and yesterday's dreams. As you gather for the midday meal, watch as your fellow monks engage in a ritual that's part devout prayer and part awkward confessional. The air is thick with an aroma best described as charming, which is to say, if you forget the food stalls at the fair, you might feel a flicker of nostalgia for the days of fresh produce, apples, oranges, anything that didn't look like it had just survived a week's brawl with itself. As the lead monk raises a bowl, you can only hope it isn't the one that's been slowly fermenting since the last full moon. In an almost synchronized motion, everyone's hands clasped together in prayer, fingers interlocking like they've forgotten how to be individuals. No pressure. But isn't it a bit intimidating to have the one guy who makes eating weeds look like a fine art right next to you? In the solemn silence of prayer, there's a certain desperation to ensure that the Lord understands the struggle of eating what looks like it came out of the back of a donkey. You sense the unspoken competition. Who can pull off the most heartfelt repentance? Lord, I know last Thursday's barley loaf was borderline edible. Forgive me for despairing over its texture. And as you look around, you glance at Brother Benedict, who has that classic "I'm better than you" expression plastered on his face. He's probably already got divine favour, and here you are trying to figure out if you can make a run for a second helping without anyone noticing. Now, speaking of food, let's take stock of the actual meal. What lies before you isn't the sumptuous feast of kings, but rather a culinary adventure into what the monks refer to as gruel. It's a love-hate relationship forged out of necessity and divine providence. Breakfast may have been that cool, runny porridge, but by the time you sit at the refectory table, you'll be pleased to know that lunchtime gruel is a different affair. What changes? The recipe is simply more of the same, but with a sprinkle of whatever herbs survive Sunday's prayer. Ah, herbs, the ancient knights of taste that try valiantly to mask just how suspicious the main course is. During these meals, there's inevitably someone who tries to engage you in philosophical dialogue while chewing on a chunk of what you've dubbed the brick loaf. Ever tried discussing the metaphysics of existence while worrying about potential crumbs lodged in your throat? You'd have better luck keeping a straight face while trying to finish a piece of medieval chalk disguised as a biscuit. Yet the conversations here vary dramatically. It's either the numbing chatter of daily activities or a contemplative discourse about life, virtues, and what type of barley flour Jesus might have preferred. Truly riveting stuff for the soul, but hardly conducive to a hearty meal. When the prayers finally finish, you find yourself in a small dilemma. How do you maneuver around the wooden table without arousing suspicion? In the kingdom of monks, timing's everything, and you'd hate to be caught swiping something off of Brother Matthias's plate, who, let's be honest, probably means to save that piece for an all-important night of solitary reflection, contemplating the divine. But to sacrifice your meal for his grace? Unthinkable. Just as you gather the courage to snag a second helping, here comes the golden challenge. Can you do this without causing the whole table to collapse into a riot over theological disputes? After all, who knew that the topic of lunchtime grace and leftovers could provoke debates that echo through the halls of the monastery like echoes of the past? Navigate these dining interactions carefully. After all, you wouldn't want to become that monk, the one whose appetite has outshone their humility. By the time you bid the graceful assembly adieu, you can't help but wonder, is this really spiritual growth? Or am I getting a PhD in how to indulge guilt-free without everyone resenting my gut? As you leave the dining hall, you know that saying grace is the best way to handle lunch guilt, almost as good as hoping tomorrow's gruel has a hidden treasure underneath. Perhaps a morsel of flavour, or at least a hint of yesterday's luck. Welcome to the medieval monk's culinary paradox, where every meal is both a feast for the soul and a gentle reprimand for the belly. And who can forget the occasional feast day? Gather round, folks. It's mega meal time, a rare blessing. If only it didn't usually consist of dry bread served cold enough to double as a doorstop. When your taste buds invoke the sweet memories of gruel, you know dinner was not a success. Picture this: the towering table adorned with spills and the remnants of medieval artistry, where the only thing missing is a hint of flavour. A rickety wooden slab designed to hold more disappointment than dishes. It's as if every culinary misfortune decided to throw a potluck in honour of the monks who barely taste their meals while keeping their faith intact. As the candles flicker on the altar of your stomach, it's time for the great line-up. You've got the infamous cold bread, of course, baked to a consistency somewhere between a brick and a medieval marvel. Each bite is a testament to the rosy-cheeked ambition of a baker who missed the mark by several hundred degrees. Slather it with whatever spread you find. Perhaps some pottage, the mystery stew that safely assumes no one truly asks for the recipe. It's overcooked remnants of whatever could be found in the last harvest. Think of it as a lengthy elaboration on the phrase, "One man's trash is another man's treasure," except you're the man eating the treasure. And wait, what's that in the centre of the table? Oh, a small dish of something resembling a bean salad. Let's call it today's special. Its vibrant green hue looks like it once made a good attempt at being alive before suffering a tragic fate as a side dish at feast day. You brave it and poke it with a fork, half expecting it to flinch back from your touch. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Instead, you find yourself having a minor existential crisis over whether it's even worth chewing. Now, let's address the beverage situation. If you think your local pub has a bizarre selection, wait until you see the options at the Monk's Feast. Water, not a chance. We're making it fancy with weak ale instead. A lovely concoction that tastes like sodden grain and carries an alcohol content weaker than your enthusiasm to eat. Keep in mind, this hazy drink has become the survival of the fittest in the medieval world. You see, also, when the water system was basically a plague waiting to ruin your day, you had to be resourceful. The fewer bacteria, the better. So beer it is. Plus, a pint of ale will do wonders becomes a mantra while your taste buds are still asking why they agreed to this in the first place. As you chew through this delightful spread of disappointment and despair, it becomes increasingly clear why monks spent part of their day fighting off the world with prayer. How else could they endure the aftermath of these feasts where not even one hearty, long-lasting meal is within reach? Surely some heavenly inspiration is required to muster the courage to digest this ambience. Is it sacrilege to think of smuggling out some bread for the evening's gnawing hunger pangs? Would they take your vow of silence away for being peculiarly creative when it comes to survival? Just as you think it can't get weirder, the abbot stands to make a feast day announcement. Gastronomic jargon comes out. Ah, yes, come forth and give thanks for the Lord, because that might distract you from the stale offerings presented to your face. Surely it's easier to be thankful instead of contemplating future dinner plans or wondering if a neighbouring village is more reputable than your own for their gastronomic endeavours. Why does he insist on sprinkling spiritual blessings onto the bread when you come to realise it only adds to your frustration, one prayer at a time? Stomach now rumbling like an angry war drum, and somehow managing to maintain dignity, the monks manage to ignore the lingering aroma of overcooked beans and that endlessly cold bread. Conversation around the table tends to ramp up as they share stories that range from wildly exaggerated personal achievements to adventure tales of visiting saints. You listen, mildly amused, wondering if anyone has the guts to share about their adventures foraging for edible scraps left behind by the feasts. But just when you think this meal can't get worse, dessert arrives, if you can even call it that. These are baked honey cakes that were quite possibly crafted in the fires of Mount Doom. Now, with a delightful crunch to rival your shoe, they are tough enough to hold their own in a duel. Did you just hear the sound of cement mixing with cake batter? Off you go, hoping this will be better than the starter that was meant to be served last week. With bellies half full and spirits slightly higher, the monks gather for the evening prayers. But let's be real, it's the contemplation of that last morsel that will dominate their thoughts tonight. In a world where the joy of the feast is compromised by the food itself, perhaps real fasting would feel more like a feast for the soul than a meal for the body. So, as the candles burn low, you realise your journey through the elaborate yet tragically bland meals of monastic life is just warming up. And it's a wild ride filled with flavours that leave you to wonder whether it's best to just keep fasting. Monks love a good pilgrimage, right? Who wouldn't want to hike for weeks with nothing but their robes, a bottle of wine and relentless mosquitoes? Living in the midst of nature sounds great until you've got sweat under your stinky armpits and zero souvenirs to show for it. Hope you've packed the hardtack, but hold on to your rosaries, my friends, because this journey is about as glamorous as a mudslide in a pigsty. Picture this. Your abbot has just announced another pilgrimage to a holy site far, far away, and you're the lucky one chosen to lead the motley crew of monks who all have varying degrees of unpleasant body odour. What could go wrong, besides everything? As you don your sandals, flats that provide the same comfort as walking barefoot on broken glass, you exchange nervous glances with your fellow monks. Will your feet survive? Will the insect feast on your flesh like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet? Spoiler alert, they will. The first steps of the journey commence, and you quickly realise that nature isn't some serene paradise. It's a cacophony of chaos. The cries of those cheerful robins serenading you aren't music. They're nature's version of a battle cry. It becomes clear that every hill isn't a triumphant trek, but rather a merciless trial designed to test your spiritual resolve and your hamstrings. The path becomes a relentless obstacle course, filled with mud puddles that threaten to swallow your sandals whole, and the occasional patch of wild thorns that may or may not be sponsored by your local herbalist. Oh, and food. Let's talk about nourishment along the way. Your abbot probably thinks brown bread and a few dried figs are suitable for sustenance, but good luck not feeling like you're chewing on cardboard while your stomach begins gurgling like an angry bear. You start daydreaming about a rare monk's feast, but all you get is fruit leather, because calling it dried fruit is just too passé for the medieval palate. As the days drag on, it becomes more than just a pilgrimage. It's an endurance test against your own sanity. You march on, eyes glazed over as thighs burn and feet scream. Sweat pools in places your woolen robe doesn't cover, and you find yourself wishing you'd opted for expressing your devotion through a nice quiet prayer at home instead. Hey God, I'll worship from my straw bed and avoid twisting my ankle on a treacherous trail. The camaraderie, however, can be charming, if charming includes shared misery. You and your fellow monks might find laughter in unexpected places, like when Brother Usual clumsily trips over his own robe and clears a patch of shrubs, like he's trying to establish a new religious order on the forest floor. Plus, who could forget about the nighttime campfire gatherings, where tales of miraculous occurrences are exaggerated beyond recognition? Oh yes, I once prayed for a squirrel, and it rained acorns. But in those moments of shared hilarity, the warmth of the flame illuminating your faces feels almost sacred. You might start to believe your quest is worthwhile, even if your socks are basically a science experiment at this point. As you near the holy site, the notion of spiritual enlightenment washes over you, at least until you remember that you're supposed to arrive fresh-faced and clean. Oops! Looks like you were several dirt piles and quite a few bug bites short of a holy glow. Now you have to muster the grace to step into the shrine as a figurative and literal hot mess. Here I am, O Holy One, a walking testament to discomfort and questionable decision-making. Once there, the sheer weight of devotion hits you. You'll spend hours praying, listening to the echoes of the church's age-old walls, and pondering the cosmos along with your all-too-familiar body odour. As you kneel before the altar, you might feel an unexpected wave of something resembling joy. Perhaps it's the spiritual high of reaching your destination, or merely the knowledge that you're now free from that clunky trek. When it's finally time to regroup and head back, you realise the pilgrimage has changed you. The aches, the struggles, the laughter, they're all part of the monkhood experience. You might even find your dedication shining through those proverbial cracks in your soul. But as you slowly make your way home, one thing is for sure. You're never going to look at a bottle of wine or a robe the same way again. Welcome back to the monastery life, where all those moments of joy doled out by Mother Nature are overshadowed by the fact that now you actually have to wash those robes before recommencing your devotions. Ah, the never-ending cycle of cleanliness and chaos. Ever try to keep your attention on the scriptures when the logic makes as much sense as a goat wearing a tuxedo? Welcome to the "let's pretend we get it" club. The monks read. You nod along, wondering if that one paragraph hit you in the head, or if you just dozed off. The truth is, reading the scriptures in medieval times was like diving into a pool of molasses. Slow, sticky, and utterly perplexing. Imagine the scene. candlelight flickers against the stones of the chapel, a flock of monks clutching tattered books while squinting at the pages as if they were ancient hieroglyphs instead of God's word. It's a delightful juxtaposition of holiness and absurdity, and you can't help but wonder who thought this whole thing was a good idea. As the monks gather for their daily readings, the abbot stands at the front of the room, clad in a robe that resembles a diploma of disappointment. Instead of flashing bright certificates, this robe has seen more stains than a festival wine tent. He clears his throat, a gesture that could intimidate even a dragon, and starts his performance. There's a lot of "and lo," and "verily," and "behold," in a voice that could put a caffeinated squirrel to sleep. His delivery sounds like a cross between a melodramatic actor and a fellow who just stepped on a thumbtack. If you're not careful, the rhythm of the readings can lull your thoughts into a stupor, drifting off into dreams of better meals or perhaps a life as a wandering bard. Now, the scriptures themselves are meticulously copied by hand, each scribe in the monastery believing they're contributing to a divine masterpiece. But here's the catch. Those books often look like a 7-year-old tried their hand at art. The letters are crooked, the ink splatters abound, and the margins are filled with doodles of goats that look suspiciously happy. Yet, despite the questionable artistry, these pages contain profound wisdom, albeit couched in language that feels about as approachable as a tax form. If you find yourself zoning out, you're not alone. The monks have developed a time-honoured strategy they've named the Holy Head Nod. It's an intricate ballet of craning your neck to watch the abbot fervently read, while simultaneously battling drowsiness. The key to mastering this technique: you maintain an air of reverence, all the while balancing the urgent need to rest your eyelids like a sleepy cat. If caught, just proclaim it's an intentional, meditative posture. Bonus points if you manage a slow clap after the reading to cover your tracks. During one particularly riveting reading about the trials of Job, your mind wanders to the question of laundry. Would Job have preferred clean sheets if he had been endowed with the heavenly wisdom of detergent? You wonder. Imagining the ancient context of washing cloths, you start to feel a bond with those old, beleaguered manuscripts, ink stains and all. Surely they too have known the drudgery of laundry day. Then, there's the periodic digression into debates about interpretation, an explosion waiting to happen. Was that line about camels really about camels? One monk might ponder out loud, prompting a frenzied argument that rivals the tension of a championship wrestling match, with the more serious folks insisting it's a metaphor for someone's misplaced aspirations, while the jokesters chime in with lines about how camels probably had better travel plans before the whole holiness craze hit. And before you know it, half the morning is spent arguing about the meaning of a single verse, while the rest of the world outside the monastery goes on as usual, perhaps sipping coffee that the monks will never know. As the abbot tries to steer everyone back to wisdom instead of whimsical interpretations, you can practically see the sleep variables rising in the chapel ceiling like ghosts from a medieval fable. Finally, with a dramatic flourish that would make even the most beleaguered Shakespearean actor proud, the reading concludes. The monks breathe a collective sigh of relief, half of them still wrestling with whether they grasped anything at all. As they file out, the deep sigh, the kind that could be mistaken for a deflating air mattress, fills the room. Because in the end, the monks' reading isn't just about gaining insight, it's also about collecting moments of shared absurdity in their quest for holiness. Like flailing a pillow to fend off sleep, the journey through ancient texts is one of laughter, confusion, and the incredible bond forged through collective bewilderment. Who needs a good night's rest when you're drowning in the depths of theological debate? Let's talk about the abbot's orders. It's basically a medieval way of saying, I'm in charge here. Ever tried arguing with a guy who believes he's got divine authorization? Spoilers. It seldom ends well unless you've discovered the secret to piety and tact. Picture yourself in a dimly lit stone chapel, incense clinging to the air as the abbot commands the room like a well-fed rooster overseeing his domain. His voice booms like it's echoing through the very halls of heaven, blending authority with a hint of divine exasperation. Abbots had a way of sprinkling in just enough piety to make it clear that disobeying them could potentially cost you your soul. And hey, nobody wants to ugly cry before the pearly gates. So there you are, a humble monk with a medieval to-do list longer than your last prayer for a decent meal. You've got to keep the monastery spotless, till the sacred garden while dodging bees, and decipher ancient texts. No easy feat when half the monks are half asleep. Each day begins with the abbot throwing down his version of the law as if it were the latest fashion trend. Now go forth and pray like it's your last chance to have a shot at divine favour. You trudge outside, your mind somewhere between reverence and existential dread. Because honestly, how many prayers can one man mutter before he starts inventing excuses? As diligent as monks are supposed to be, there's an unspoken motto whispered among the chapel stone walls: where there's a will, there's a way. An audible way to scuttle away from chores. And speaking of chores, let's talk about the worthiest one of all, cleaning. Think about it. Armed with a wooden stick and an hourglass of sand, you've turned the sweeping of the stone floors into an unrelenting fitness regimen. Dust bunnies. They are practically the third member of your prayer group, and trust me, they're not going down without a fight. You've never felt so spiritually enlightened while battling a mound of dirt bigger than St. Benedict's beard. As lunchtime rolls around, so does the abbot, who, upon noticing the pile of dirt, declares, "Monks should work hard and eat harder." Alas, hard work means packing more gruel into your belly, raising the question, wouldn't it be divine to stay hungry just to avoid that second bowl of bland slop? But no. The abbot's orders cut through your will like a sword through a ripe loaf of bread, and you find yourself having to eat the mystery stew that, might have been last week's leftovers. Cue the shudders. Once the stomach rumbles settle, it's time to channel your inner scribe. You gather around a long table strewn with scrolls and parchment, squinting at ancient texts like they bear the secret of immortality. You can almost hear the abbot through the pages. Let reverence fill your thoughts as you transcribe this tedious genealogy of someone no one can remember. Your eyes glaze over, were your ancestors even in attendance at that last feast? The abbot's orders become all-consuming as you meticulously copy down every fraying letter. You feel your soul leaving your body with every letter you write. Ever felt like you'd rather herd chickens than write what sounds like the medieval version of a phone book? But fear not. Boredom is but a muse hiding behind the pages. You start doodling little caricatures of the more colourful monks in the margins, because who doesn't need a good laugh between chronicling years of divine lineage? Then there's the evening prayer, another chance for the abbot to remind everyone who runs this ship, or should I say, this monastery. You stumble into the chapel, exhausted, rubbing your eyes. The service begins, and suddenly you feel like a contestant in a medieval endurance game, with groans and coughs echoing through the air like an off-key choir. Worship instead transforms into a desperate battle against the urge to slip into slumber. The closing benediction arrives, and you leap to your feet like a startled goat. Yes, the abbot's orders echoed in your ears. Unforgettable, much like the taste of last week's gruel. With a sigh of relief, you escape into the night, ready to discuss the inelegance of gruel with your fellow monks, while plotting your next great rebellion against the divine diet plan. Beyond the abbot's orders lies an experience rich in absurdity, where piety and pressing responsibilities clash with humanity's oldest follies, creating an environment where monks learn more about surviving the day than the divine. Because let's face it, when you're battling boredom, you'll likely find camaraderie instead of transcendence. You leave the day's practices with the same takeaway. If at first you don't succeed, try finding a snack and make a plan for next week's service. Because after all, that abbot's heart might be in the right place, but your stomach? That's a whole different story. After all this work, how do you catch those glorious zers? Monks have perfected the sleep hack of catching some made-up s while still appearing pious. Understand, it's an art, a new venture for your exhausted body, perfecting how to appear awake while dropping like a stone. Picture this, a silent stone chapel, the warm flicker of candles casting flickering shadows on the walls, and here you are, head nodding like a malfunctioning bobblehead. You strategically choose a spot at the back of the congregation, directly under that ominously low ceiling beam, and position your back against the wall, all while desperately trying to keep your eyelids from becoming heavier than the duty of daily prayers. Now, whether you're seated on a hard wooden bench or on a straw-covered floor, spoiler, it's the latter, the key to successful napping lies mostly in technique. Some monks master the head-down pose, which has become an art form of sorts. Trust me, it's all about angle. Leaning forward just enough so your chin rests comfortably on your chest makes you look contemplative. Who knows? Maybe the divine spirit might actually wander lazy thoughts towards your mind while you sneak a quick nap. If you happen to wobble too far and end up slumping into your neighbour on the left, that's just what you call spiritual disorientation. Embrace the faux pas and think of it as being ever so humble. The real trick, of course, is timing. You've got to synchronise your micronaps with the day's prayers. Ah yes, that magical hour when the monks gather to chant the psalms, the perfect backdrop for a peaceful snooze. If the sound of soothing chants can't lull you to sleep, the sheer willpower of the monks may do the job for you. Just imagine all those rhythmic refrains washing over you like a gentle wave, paired with sporadic snuffles and rustling robes. A 30-second power nap at this point is practically an Olympic sport, pushing your mind into a meditative trance, but just enough not to offend the solemn vibe. Let's talk about bedding, or rather, the utter lack thereof. Forget pillows. Your makeshift mattress consists of a straw mound that's seen far too many seasons. You can hardly distinguish whether you're sleeping on a bed or paying tribute to a local barnyard. But the trick is to embrace the discomfort. This is where the meditation skills come into play. You will quite literally feel every single straw poking into your back while negotiating peace with your blasted aches, wondering if you'll emerge with more bruises than inspiration. But fear not. Those who endure linger on in spiritual legend. Speaking of legends, you may be thinking it might be a good idea to spice up your napping with a bit of deliberate flair. Enter the prayer position sprawl. You assume the classic monk pose, palms turned upward and head slightly tilted back, fully ensuring your outward expression reads like a serious contemplator on a quest for enlightenment. You'll be asleep before you even realise it, and if anyone dares question your naptime motives, you can simply declare that you were engaging with the breath of the universe. Exactly. Perfectly pious explanation, and you might even gain a little sparkle of reverence from those around you. After your refreshing, widely acknowledged nap, it is not a snooze, comes the moment of reckoning, waking up. The first thing you'll notice is how chores were likely going on around you while you floated in dreamland. But in true monk style, you exude a renewed sense of purpose, even if you have drool on your robe. What was that, my brother? You'll ask as you scramble back into the worshipping posture, making sure you're resuming whatever poetry of prayer was unveiled while you held court with the Sandman. And there you have it, the sacred ritual of balancing naps and a meditative life. This isn't just a cultural phenomenon, it's survival. Remember, the ancient monk's ability to combine spirituality with nap time is a secret gladness, a method more uplifting than a gospel tune sung by a heavenly choir. So, as you settle down in bed tonight, practicing this time-honoured art of sneaky sleep, let the wisdom of medieval monks guide you. Just avoid the urge to clunk your head into your neighbour's shoulder, for they may not appreciate the lesson. Who thought games had no place in a monastery? Here's how to kick back after a long day. Gather your fellow monks, pull out a few dice and pray they don't critique your gaming strategy too harshly. Just keep the gruel out of play. We don't need those beliefs ruining the evening. But let's be honest. Game night in a monastery isn't exactly your Friday night pizza party. You might be laughing and rolling dice, but behind every chuckle lurks a heavy cloud of, should we really be doing this? The tension is thick enough to slice with a dull butter knife. As the flickering candlelight dances on the stone walls, the air thickens with the aroma of unsentimental boredom. At a monastery, fun ranks somewhere between ephemeral pleasures and things that might make God faint. Your lively group of gaming monks is equipped with insufficient snacks, essentially just bread and cheese that have likely been critiqued by the local goats for their lack of freshness. And don't even think about washing it down with something festive like wine. No self-respecting monk would waste good Merlot on an evening of dice rolling, even if that Merlot were old and tasted suspiciously like vinegar. But wait, there's treasure in that pantry. There's a dusty old sack of stale nuts and a suspicious jar of pickled herrings, if you're brave enough to serve them. It's all part of the adventure, right? Who needs chips when you have the texture of petrified bark fragments? Just pray nobody gets brave enough to try the pickled delicacies, lest the evening's merriment devolve into something akin to a medieval gastrointestinal disaster. What are you playing, you ask? Perhaps a quick game of monks and marauders, where strategy reigns supreme and dice rolls decide the fate of your mild-mannered characters. Imagine standing in a drafty hall, battling the elements as you decide whether to embark on a quest for the holy grail of all snacks, the rumoured stash of honey cakes hidden deep beneath a pile of dusty robes in the back of the refectory. Picture this: a heated debate over the best route to reach the grail of snacks, with one monk determinedly insisting, "The left route is cursed. I'm telling you, Brother Benedict had bad luck going that way." Yea, verily, they claim Brother Benedict is still struggling with potato-based dream sequences in his slumber. Should you risk taking the cursed path, or stick to the well-trodden ways of unremarkable but safe gruel? It's a dilemma fit for a throne of games, and let's not ignore the conversations punctuating the 6-hour marathon of fun. The seriously stale banter about who forgot to wash the bell tower again, or the perennial complaint about the lack of decent incense. Did Brother Ignatius manage to grab the last piece of bread before anyone else? Tsk, tsk. It's all part of the evening's charm. Nobody ever said monks had to be dull, even if other monks thought your strategy of hiding behind a wall of stale bread was bordering on sacrilege. As the night wears on and your gaming spirit elevates, you'll notice your companions glancing at the half-eaten pickled herrings with disdain. Who knew herring could spark such passionate debates on how much suffering Colin's batch inflicted upon their digestive tracts? A suggestion arises: why not offer those notorious fish as a gamble for the next dice roll? Whoever loses gets to eat the fish. The collective gasps could shift the heft of the room quicker than a rogue band of bandits at a church picnic. Eventually, the game night winds down. There's laughter, squabbling over the last bite of stale bread, and morale-boosting quotes from the Book of Psalms that rival bad sitcom punchlines. The candlelight flickers as you ponder whether such holy gathering should continue, lest the abbot hears tales of frivolity over dice and snacks. But on this night, as the echoes of laughter slowly fade into the draughty corners of the monastery, you understand that even monks, dedicated to prayer and chants, are human. Somewhere behind their robes and solemn faces, They yearn for connection just like everyone else, a craving to escape, if just for a while, into a world where laughter can survive even the weightiest of burdens. Tomorrow, it's back to gruel and the weight of divine obligations. But tonight? Tonight is about friendship, fun, and the freedom to roll a die in a holy game of fate, even if it means dodging pickled herrings. Between the chores, hit the chapel for some peace of mind, or at least until you bump into those nighttime demons. Those sleep-deprived monks searching for divine help are bound to be haunted by all manners of mischief. Who knew they had the capability to turn praying into panic? As darkness settles over the monastery, the flickering candlelight casts long shadows that play tricks on tired eyes. Flipping through the pages of their well-worn psalters, monks attempt to find solace, but instead they often conjure up every concern of their day. Am I deeply devoted enough? Did I nod off during prayers again? Let's get real. Between the strenuous hours of labour and the even more strenuous hours of pious contemplation, sleep feels elusive, much like the last bread roll on feast day. How can one find peace when every creak of the rafters sounds like an impending doom? Imagine a poor monk tossing and turning in a straw bed, wondering if all the rumours about pesky demons are true. Suddenly that creaky sound turns into a full-blown choir of worry, shouting louder than the abbot himself. Nighttime is no picnic for these guys. While you're snuggled up in your clean sheets, they're out there trying to ward off spirits. "Believe it or not, I saw a ghost last night," exclaims Brother Anselm, clutching a candle as if it can ward off evil spirits, or at the very least illuminate where he put his last pair of sheep-wool socks. It was right over by the altar. Meanwhile, everyone rolls their eyes silently while thinking, "Sure, Anselm, maybe next time you'll lose your dreams instead of your socks." It's in the dark that the real fears awaken. This is the hour when sinful thoughts are most prone to creep in, like a rat skittering across the floor during a dramatic sermon. Can you blame these guys for praying desperately? Please, Lord, just give me some peace and quiet. And while you're at it, could you send a meat pie instead of dreams about self-inflicted chastisement? Now, let's not forget about the ingenious methods these monks devised for allay their nocturnal worries. Ever heard of sleep hacks? Monks mastered the art of meditation while standing up, a feat in itself. To truly impress, gather your fellow brothers and just chant loud enough to wake up the whole town and hopefully alleviate any lurking demons. If everyone else is awake, then there's a collective sense of security. Nothing says we are here to pray like a solid 2 a.m. chorus of, "Oh Lord, save us from the dreaded nightmares." However, instead of delightful hymns, imagine bumping into a fellow monk in the moonlight. "Hey Thomas, is that you?" you whisper, gripping your prayer book like it could shield you from phantoms. "Are you also dodging demons tonight?" Now that's a loaded question, isn't it? Picture Thomas grinning sheepishly. "Nah, I just lost my balance while trying to meditate. Thought I'd commune with the floor, straight down on my face." After exhausting every method of assuaging their fears, the inevitable happens. Exhaustion takes hold. Mornings are brutal. Picture the rising sun shining in through cracks in the stone as you join your fellow monks who could use a good stretch and a splash of water. "Morning, everyone. Did you hear the one about the ghost who got scared of us?" Brothers chuckle half-heartedly, still wrestling with tired minds and achy backs. It's a vicious cycle, fighting demons at night, praying for forgiveness for sleeping through matins, and then starting all over again. Eventually the reality sinks in that perhaps the demons aren't the ones in the chapel, but rather in the dreadful combination of exhaustion, fear, and bad porridge. Every monk learns this truth. Dealing with life's demons means embracing them. Maybe it's just a habit to wrestle with your thoughts and hopes, comforting and terrifying in one swing. That cold stone chapel, it becomes a sanctuary of both prayer and hilarity, a reminder that even as you battle personal fears and sleep deprivation, laughter often chases the night demons away. So, contemplating the greater mysteries of life and ultimately transforming sleep into a heavy, giggling haze, these pioneering monks figure that perhaps the battles with their inner selves could be conquered not just with prayers, but a bit of joyful jest. After all, how insurmountable can your worries be when you face them, both in spirit and humour? Monks really nailed it when they discovered that laughter, just like a good confession, can lighten even the heaviest of souls. Welcome to the sartorial hell of medieval monastic life, where every thread you stitch has more holes than a Swiss cheese. Ever pondered if there's a secret mending society? Spoiler, it's just a bunch of monks trying to avoid looking like they lost a fight with a hedgehog. In a world where laundry days are as rare as a well-fed rooster, you might think washing socks clean is the holy grail. But alas, that's not the case. Picture this. Before you rise to greet the morning sun, you've already got a layer of what can only be described as chronic stains existing as part of your identity, especially if you're a monk. Those burlap tunics have endured more stains than your dinner plate after a particularly messy feast. And don't even get me started on the smell. If your scent could speak, it'd likely confess some deep-seated trauma and beg for redemption. Ever tried to air out a woolen robe on a rainy day? Spoiler alert. It doesn't just attract fresh air and compliments. Inside the cloister's stone walls, there's a daily devotion to the sin of frugality. The monks muster their collective crafting skills to patch together garments that look like they've survived a battle with a herd of angry goats. Need a new tunic? Too bad. You better hope you have a decent stash of thread, because you're not buying anything new until the next Easter feast, and that's only if you've made good with the Lord. Besides, why splurge on clothing when you can embrace the poverty-chic look that screams, "I'm one with the earth," while simultaneously driving away any possible sense of dignity? As you sit and mend, your fingers become a battlefield. Twisted knots here, a splintering piece of fabric there. The stakes are high. It's like a reality show called Survivor Monk Edition. You're tasked with resurrecting those worn-out sleeves while other monks whisper about your thread count behind your back. "Have you seen Brother Bart's tunic?" they might cluck. "Looks like he's trying to nest in a hay bale while pretending it's fashion week." Sometimes it feels like there's a competitive edge to this mundane task. What if you could win an invisible trophy for the best stitching job? Suddenly you're not just repairing fabric, you're reinventing your entire monastic persona. Surely if the abbot were judging, your work could earn you more than a prayer or two. But alas, it's just you against the tapestry of life's disappointments and a constant array of itchy wool. What do you use for inspiration during these late-night sewing sessions? The last candle is flickering, the room dim to the point where your needle could easily double as a sight for deadly crossbow attacks. Your fellow monks are sleeping, of course. They dream of heavenly choirs and perhaps a patch-free future. You, however, are wrestling with the devil's thread, frustrated with your own inability to keep this garment intact without turning it into a modern abstraction of disarray. As you prick your finger for the 20th time, you can't help but wonder if perhaps divine intervention is necessary. Will St. Apollonia come to guide you through this treacherous battle? Or are you left to fend for yourself amidst the cotton chaos? When you finally finish your piece, it feels less like a victory and more like the culmination of countless contemplations on what it means to live an earthly life, armed with a newly patched tunic that hopefully won't disintegrate the moment you step outside. You commence a slow, careful inspection. How does it feel? About as comfortable as a pet cat wrapped in a burrito. But hey, it's a reflection of your devotion, and if somebody happens to ask you about those threadbare knee patches, You can smile mysteriously and say, it's a meditation on suffering, obviously. Next time you catch a glimpse of a monk shining in their hard-fought garment, remember the rich depth behind that unassuming attire. Each stitch tells a story of perseverance, patience, and a fantastic amount of frustration. So next time you pick up that thread and needle, just know you've walked in the holy footwear of those who have stitched together faith while avoiding the pitfalls of nincompoopery. Because in the end, if you can survive mending a monk's clothing, you can survive anything life throws your way. Now, let's hope the laundry cycle isn't as exhausting as a medieval meal. You're exhausted from the day, and the last meal is upon you. Remember that leftover porridge? You'd sell your soul for fresh bread. So let's see what the kitchen's whipping up. Spoiler, it might not be pretty, but it has to beat yesterday's gruel. In the mystical heart of the monastery, the clanking of metal pots seems to echo the solemn chant of monks, perhaps implying they're pre-gaming the heavenly banquet. Whispers of miracles waft through the air, like the tantalizing scent of bread rolls that have no chance of appearing on the menu. Instead, you're served a delightful surprise, a steaming bowl of something resembling yesterday's porridge, with a dash of optimism, or maybe just a dash of dried herbs. It's hard to say. As you gather around the communal table, you and your fellow monks find comfort in the camaraderie formed over meals that could only be characterized as mystery soup. Imagine sitting shoulder to shoulder with all the other monks, each wielding spoons as though they were swords in battle, fighting for the last remaining scraps of flavour amidst what is ultimately a culinary masterpiece of disaster. You might even find yourself engaged in a fierce debate over the proper technique for mopping up the soupy remains with what you can only hope is bread, and not something that came from under the bed. Speaking of bread, though it rarely graces the table, when it does, it's a treasured event. One monk with the audacity to even call it bread dared refer to it as barley, while the other, more sceptical one snickered from across the bowl, trading glances that speak volumes. What's really in this stuff? Rumour has it that the bread is combined with sawdust just to make it more filling, because who needs fibre when you can survive on, well, everything other than actual nutrition? Chewing your way through the meal becomes a test of faith, especially when you squeeze your eyes shut, hoping that whatever concoction lies within your bowl will resemble food in some fantasy realm. After battling your way through the evening meal, you might contemplate the wisdom of sharing horror stories from your daily endeavours, or more specifically from your attempts to dodge the abbot's displeasure while still managing to stay semi-fed. Today, I defied starvation while cultivating the herb garden, you'll declare, as a fellow monk raises his mug of suspicious ale in solidarity, possibly wondering if sympathy is even on the table. Just be grateful, you think, while monitoring the scabs on your fingers from yet another hard day's labour. Goosebumps accompany this camaraderie as you recount how the last batch of ale made everyone cross-eyed for an hour. What a time to be alive. But let's not forget the after-dinner tradition. Evening prayers where you're expected to repay the universe for your bowl of soup while suppressing that feeling of regret for not grabbing a second portion. The abbot looks out over the heads of the order, lips synced into a prayerful position as the fading light casts eerie shadows, making every cracked stone wall resemble a dream of its own. You wonder for a brief moment if he ever accidentally looks back from his reverie to find one of you hopelessly engaging in the savage act of scraping a second helping, and how you wish there were a secret ritual for sneaking in a slice of salty cheese behind the chapel. Of course, some monks gain knowledge in the art of mealtime creativity. Various methods have been devised for packing down those last bits of porridge into strategic portions in their clothing to get by for the fast that's coming the next day. Spoon it into your hood or sleeve. Who will ever know? You'll still appear monk-like and sometimes even saintly. Meanwhile, the poor souls who foolishly laid eyes on the empty pot have resigned themselves to dreaming about bread that isn't really made of rocks and marginally more flammable oats. Evenings are for self-recrimination. Small groups of monks huddled together, reflectively journaling about their lofty ambitions. To eat a complete meal, you might write with fervour, fueled by the furious desire for something more than gruel. As sleep begins to beckon with its warm embrace, the reality swirls around you. Life and death, heaven and hell, blessing and blandness. You've given up trying to figure it all out, clinging instead to the fleeting fantasy of a future filled with roasted meats and feasts, or at least a tantalizing slice of pie. Finally, the day closes with the omnipresent sound of snoring from those dear brothers across the hall who are undoubtedly dreaming of something far more indulgent than time spent in the kitchen. You lie there, quietly pondering your ongoing relationships with the food, the prayers, and, okay, maybe even a small prayer to the brewmaster above for a slice of good fortune. And with that final thought of bread to the moon, the night takes hold, and you surrender to sleep while holding on to the last vestiges of hope that tomorrow will bring a more glorious feast than today, a medieval monk's blessing, pure and simple. After all the teacher's lessons and endless prayers, nighttime falls, but it comes with its own challenges. How to wind down without a smartphone. You're left with a flickering candlelight and perhaps the insatiable need to mull over the meaning of life once and for all. It's an existential crisis with a side of sleep deprivation as you sit in your hovel, surrounded by the echoing silence of your fellow monks, each trapped in their own spiral of divine contemplation, or just wondering who still hasn't washed their linen. As darkness wraps around your stone walls like an uninvited guest, the soothing sounds of crickets chirping outside create a tantalizing backdrop, taunting you with thoughts of what it means to truly rest. But rest is fleeting in a monastery. It's as if every shadow holds a spiritual test waiting to be passed. Have you ever tossed and turned on a bed made of straw and humility, squirming about while questioning your purpose like a medieval philosopher with too many questions and zero answers? The candle flickers ominously, each dance of the flame reminding you that sleep is not just an escape but a rare achievement. Every crackle of the wick sends your thoughts spiralling into a vortex of what-ifs and should-haves. Did you actually remember to pray for strength today? Or did you just mumble the words while staring at the wall? That nagging feeling of eternal guilt might just keep you up a little longer than planned, as if the universe conspired against your sleep. And don't get me started on the distractions. The occasional scrape of a chair, the soft murmurs of your brothers debating the finer points of scriptural interpretation. Or worse, that one monk who insists on reading aloud the lives of the saints as if this is some monastic stand-up comedy show. You know the type. And thus he was thrown into the lion's den and you're just wishing he could have been thrown a pillow instead. The subtle sensations of discomfort arise as you desperately try to block out their nightly antics, wondering if snoring could be considered a form of prayer or outright blasphemy. But the real kicker, the genuine struggle of a monk's life, lies in that flickering flame itself. You think you can simply snuff it out and surrender to sleep? Oh my dear monk, surrendering isn't an option. It's a triple tap of the divine trigger. As you pulse between wakefulness and dreams, you imagine diving into sleep like it's a pool of holy water, only to remember that you'll be up at dawn doing it all over again. Now, if you could somehow make peace with the overwhelming strands of thought, nightly reflections could transform into something far more enlightening. Picture it. In the middle of the night, just you, your thoughts, and perhaps a whisper of a new revelation, a mysterious solution to life's bothersome quibbles. But wait. There's a sudden rustling under your mattress. Could it be a mouse? Or, worse, Another monk attempting to violate the sacred code of solitary reflection by stealing your midnight snack supplies. Those stale crumbs should remain unscathed. As you venture into this mystical headspace, let's not forget the wise monastic teachings. Remember, sleep is for the soul, they say, as if sleep is something you could barter or negotiate. But the real gems might only come when you least expect them. Maybe in the cracks of sleep that follow a particularly funny thought of whether angels truly would prefer singing over sifting through church worship. Eventually you find solace among the countless questions whirling in your head, each vying for attention like children in a playground. What awaits me in the afterlife? Will I be elevated to an eternal choir, or is periodic gruel the ultimate destiny? Questions that slowly bubble toward the surface like a boiling cauldron of theological mischief, weighing on your weary brain while the candlelight edges lower and lower. At last, fatigue takes its toll. The sweet embrace of sleep creeps in, cradling you in its heavy arms. But even as slumber melts over you like warm honey, it never truly erases the tickle of anxiety. Those anxious dreams may drift you towards something divine, yet feel decidedly more like a pilgrimage through an obstacle course of doubts. Who would have thought sleeping would be one of life's greatest challenges? Indeed, these are the struggles of the monks, and so you fall asleep, clutching that little flickering beacon of hope, your heart softly echoing the prayers whispered into the night. Just remember, come morning, there will be new challenges waiting, a list of chores just as endless as the questions that kept you awake. But for now, rest is here, beckoning you into its warm embrace, lulled into dreams of endless gruel and divine clarity, until that pesky rooster interrupts your visions once again. Ah, sleep, what whispers await you in the realm of dreams? Ever wondered if your nightly adventures in the land of Nod could be more than just counting sheep or dodging those commentaries about the day's work? What if your dreams are heavenly messages or a fried potato floating by? In the cosy confines of your straw bed, the transition from wakefulness to the mystical land of slumber is as crucial as finding a good spot in the monastery chapel. Ideal for both avoiding the back row nudges and catching the occasional rogue sunbeam. The moment your eyelids grow heavy, you settle deeper into that hay-stuffed mattress, possibly more bug-ridden than you'd like to admit. Welcome to the dreams of a medieval monk, where piety meets pandemonium. First, there's the immediate challenge, the snores of your fellow monks. A symphony of guttural noises might fill the air like an off-key choir warmed up with ale, prompting you to wonder if this is what the afterlife sounds like, complete with a lack of personal space and an abundance of unflattering echoes. Either way, sleep is inevitable. Eventually you drift off and find yourself wandering through dreamscapes that resemble the whimsical paintings of the geniuses you've only heard about. In one dream, you might be soaring over the pastoral lands of your monastery like a hawk chasing a particularly ambitious rat. Or is that your neighbour poking you about last week's bread theft? Yes, confronting your subconscious just got a lot more colourful and frankly a bit absurd. But then there are those unsettling visions, the kind that creeps up to you like a forgotten sermon. Picture this. You're rushing to deliver a sermon on morals, only to discover you forgot the words, or worse, you're robed in nothing but a sackcloth. How mortifying! The crowd of peasants stares in stunned silence, possibly contemplating how to avoid ever attending your services again. Cue my public disgrace, you might murmur softly, fingers tracing the stains on your robe. During these nightmarish scenarios, you might even find yourself unwittingly wrestling with a particularly stubborn goat, a fitting metaphor for unresolved life choices. Will I forever be known as the shepherd of the stubborn? You contemplate as the goat chews at the hem of your robe, clearly unimpressed by your poetic interpretations of sacred texts. As the hours scuttle by like those roaches you'd much rather forget, those dreams could take an even stranger turn. Enter divine messengers who resemble your less than godly neighbour Timothy, now with fiery wings and an unexpected enthusiasm for granting you visions of holiness. How about an encore for breakfast, they announce, holding out a golden glistening loaf. But wait, is that a loaf or merely yesterday's gruel repurposed? The line between the heavenly and the grotesque isn't so clear when you're hungry and half asleep. Dazed by these conflicting images, a scenario often emerges where your abbot appears, ridiculously adorned with what seems to be an ornate crown made entirely of flowers. And is that a hint of jealousy bubbling just beneath the surface? All hail the floral abbot, you proclaim in your dream, eliciting laughter from the other monks who, in this strange merge of dreams and reality, begin to float like they're auditioning for a monk version of a Renaissance festival drama. But eventually, the dreams take on a softer tone. You ponder your daily fears. Were the prayers heartfelt? Were you diligent in your duties? Or did you slink away during the middle of the grueling chant like many of your fellow rites? Perhaps you simply harbour the ancient tradition of fretting about your eternal soul, which offers just enough material for your subconscious to mould into dream fodder. As the morning light begins to triumphantly break through the cracks in the wooden walls, the rooster crows, heralding both indignation and delight. With one foot reluctantly nudging you back towards the waking world, you brace for reality, a return to the rigours of monastic life. No time for nightmares or fanciful dreams. You roll over in your straw bed, perhaps longing for one more moment with your cherished fried potato dream companion. Alas, the familiar chant of the bell calls you back to the monastery life, reminding you not just of duty but of the absurdity and richness embedded in even the simplest of prayers. Rise and shine, medieval monk. The day of work awaits, but you can hold on to those wild, whimsical dreams. As you head to the chapel, the memory of fried potatoes may just inspire a new zeal in your heart, if only to ensure your next adventures in the land of dreams don't include an audience. But wait, morning. You're jerked from your dreams of adventure by a rooster, and here we are, back to the splendid reality of cold stone walls, gruel, and a long day of, well, more of the same, ready to do it all again. Because in the realm of monks, the grind never stops. The sun barely peeks over the horizon, and somehow you're already roused into a world where your biggest goals are staying awake long enough to make it through morning prayers, and avoiding eye contact with the abbot as he gives you the "I see you inhaling breakfast" glare. You shuffle out of your straw mattress, which, let's be honest, feels like it could double as an insect hotel. Each footstep echoes in the chilling silence, and the delightful draught sneaks through the cracks in the stones like a persistent child trying to get your attention. Welcome to the medieval alarm clock. Your body, achy, weary, and suspiciously attached to a persistent itch, isn't taking this morning well. Chilly air greets you like an overzealous fan, and all you can think is, do I have to wear this scratchy wool robe again? Oh yes, you do. In a world where fashion means one robe until it smells like a goat that had a bad day, what choice do you have? As you pull your robe tighter around you, searching for warmth, let's pause for a second. What even makes a monk's robe that horrifyingly heavy? Is it the weight of piety, or is it just the sheer lack of quality fabric? Spoiler. It's a bit of both. Some say they're woven with the sacrifice of the saints. Others say it's just made from sheep who wish they could have gone to a spa. Dutifully you head for the common hall. A wooden table stretches out before you, arms opened wide with the anticipation of breakfast, which, hint, is only filled with lukewarm gruel that could be mistaken for wall paste. The kitchen monks, bless their souls, cheerfully plop heaps of it into wooden bowls, garnished with a sprig of whatever might still be alive. Bon appetit, they say, giving you the hopeful smile of someone who's been tasting this gruel for years. As you lift the bowl to your lips, you realise breakfast this morning might even involve a surprise topping of, was that a hare? Maybe a bug? Who knows? Just remember, if it moves and you're not meant to, you've accepted your new roommate. Breakfast becomes more of a gamble than a meal, but hey, at least it doesn't come with a side of judgment. After breakfast, it's time to gather for morning prayers. You file into the chapel, which radiates the kind of solemnity usually reserved for school assemblies before summer vacation. Saints painted on the walls are watching you more intently than your old math teacher ever did. Feelings of guilt wash over you like cold, unfiltered water, and you settle into your spot trying to focus on the words of wisdom echoing around you. But wait, is that a fly buzzing in your ear? Yes it is. Swat it away, only to earn the underappreciated look of disapproval from Brother Humbleworth. The ritual is quite the performance. It's like a medieval talent show, only nobody's winning any prizes for their vocal strength, and everyone's whispering about how they forgot to do their chores while secretly waiting for the morning chant to end. Little do the monks know, this beautiful chaos of monotony prepares them for life outside the monastery. Not that they'll ever need it, of course. Who wants a career when you have the charm of eternal celibacy and cranky neighbours? And somehow, amidst the musical notes of off-key anthems, time sneaks away like that hare from yesterday's sermon. Once prayers are concluded, it's time to begrudgingly return to your roles, labouring in the fields, weaving fabric, or maybe rectifying the unfortunate flaw in yesterday's paintings of the Last Supper. Whatever calls you, take it with the grace of someone who just survived a medieval sitcom pilot called, "Wow, this is a bad idea." So, as you step out into the sun's hesitant warmth, you take a breath and remind yourself that, while life in the monastery is undeniably absurd, it's also a testament to human endurance. Sure, you may not get to cuddle under sheets upstairs, but you're part of a sacred community where even a stroll outside is flavoured with ancient wisdom and inexplicable routines. You might still wonder why you subjected yourself to this life, but as the sun climbs high in the sky and the aroma of gruel lingers in your consciousness, one truth remains. You're alive. You're part of something chaotic yet sacred, and soon enough you might even find joy in this convoluted path of monkhood. And that, dear friends, is what mornings in a monastery are all about. Welcome to another day of getting it together, or trying your best not to fall into the gruel again.